Today we have two cases that will shock you and have you looking for answers. Let's have a look and investigate. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Crime Busters 101. If you love true crime, investigations, and weekly case breakdowns, you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification button, and drop a like. It really helps the channel grow. Let's jump straight into today's case. This first one takes us to a short ride away from New York City on the Metro North commuter rail. Poughkeepsie sits on the banks of the Hudson River. The proximity of Vassar College and the Culinary Institute of America guarantee the presence of fun boutiques and fine dining. Main Mall Row, a group of 1870s Renaissance revival storefronts along Poughkeepsie's Main Street, is on the National Register of Historic Places. The 22 surrounding parks provide the opportunity to take a relaxing break from city life. Tonight's case is one of the most disturbing in American history. A quiet neighborhood, a family home, and inside it a secret so horrific it went unnoticed for years. Between 1996 and 1998, women were disappearing in Poughkeepsie, New York. Not one, not two, 8. And the man responsible was living an ordinary life, hiding in plain sight. Poughkeepsie sits along the Hudson River, a place known more for its history and quiet streets than violence. In the 1990s, it was the kind of city where people felt relatively safe. But beneath that calm surface, there were cracks. Like many cities at the time, parts of Poughkeepsie struggled with drug addiction, poverty, street-level sex work, and it was within these vulnerable communities that women began to vanish. At first, the disappearances didn't trigger panic. Some were assumed to have left town. Others were simply overlooked. But as months turned into years, the number grew, and a pattern, slowly, painfully, began to emerge. Kendall Francois was born on July 26, 1971. He grew up in Poughkeepsie, living with his parents in a modest home. By most accounts, his upbringing wasn't outwardly chaotic or violent, but there were signs, subtle ones. He was extremely withdrawn, struggled socially, often described as distant or isolated. As he got older, those traits didn't fade. He didn't build strong relationships. He didn't stand out. In fact, that was part of what made him so dangerous. He blended in. Francois eventually took a job as a sanitation worker. It was routine, predictable, and it allowed him to exist without drawing attention. But behind that quiet exterior, something darker was growing. Francois didn't choose his victims at random. He targeted women who were already vulnerable, women who might not be immediately reported missing, women the system often failed. He would approach them in areas known for street-level sex work, offer money, offer a ride. At first, there was no reason to suspect danger. But once inside his home, everything changed. He would attack suddenly. Strangulation was his method. Quiet, controlled, deadly. There were no weapons, no loud struggle, just silence. And then, he kept them. What happened next is what makes this case truly horrifying. Francois didn't dispose of the bodies in remote areas. He didn't try to hide them far away. He kept them in his own bedroom, inside the house he shared with his parents. For months, in some cases years, the conditions inside that room became unimaginable. The smell spread throughout the house. Neighbors noticed. They complained. But the explanations, trash, neglect, poor hygiene, were enough to avoid deeper scrutiny. Think about that. People walked past the house every day, completely unaware of what was inside. It's one of the most chilling aspects of this case. The idea that something so horrific could exist so close and remain hidden. As more women disappeared, police began to take notice. but the response was slow. Cases weren't immediately connected. There wasn't a strong sense of urgency, at least not at the beginning. And this is where the case becomes frustrating, because warning signs were there, patterns existed, but systemic issues played a role. Victims from marginalized backgrounds, limited resources, lack of coordination between cases. It wasn't one single failure, but a combination of many. And during that time, the killings continued. In 1998, everything shifted. One woman, whose identity is often protected in reports, managed to escape. She had been attacked, but she survived. And more importantly, she spoke. She gave police a description, and she named Kendall Francois. That moment changed everything. Police finally had a suspect, and they moved quickly. Armed with new information, police obtained a warrant. When they entered the house, nothing could have prepared them. The smell alone was overwhelming. And inside, they found the truth. Human remains, multiple victims, all in one place. Investigators described it as one of the most disturbing scenes they had ever encountered. This wasn't just a crime scene. It was a hidden graveyard inside a family home. Francois was arrested and brought in for questioning. Faced with undeniable evidence, he confessed. 8 victims, 8 lives taken. During interviews, he showed little emotion, no clear motive, no meaningful explanation. In 2000, he pleaded guilty, avoiding a full trial. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And just like that, the man who had terrorized a city was finally stopped. It's important to pause here, because this story isn't just about the killer. It's about the victims, women who had lives, families, stories, women who deserve to be protected. Too often, cases like this fade into statistics, but each of those 8 women mattered, and telling their story means remembering them. The case left behind more than shock. It raised serious questions. How did this go unnoticed for so long? Could it have been stopped earlier? And most importantly, why weren't the victims given more urgency from the start? These questions still come up today, because cases like this highlight gaps in the system and remind us that attention shouldn't depend on who the victim is. Kendall Francois spent the rest of his life in prison. He died on September 11, 2014, at just 43 years old. But his death didn't bring closure for many, because the damage had already been done. This case is one of the clearest examples. That danger doesn't always come from strangers in dark alleys. Sometimes, it's hidden behind an ordinary door. Case number 2. The disappearance of Asha Degree. On February 14, 2000, Asha Jakia Degree, a 9-year-old from Shelby, North Carolina, United States, disappeared after leaving her family's home during the early morning hours. For reasons that remain unknown, she packed a book bag and walked along North Carolina Highway 18 in heavy rain and wind. Several motorists reported seeing her. When one driver attempted to approach her about 1.3 miles, 2.1 kilometers, from her home, she left the roadside and ran into a wooded area. Her parents discovered her missing later that morning, and she has not been seen since. An extensive search located some of her personal belongings near the area where she was last observed, and in 2001 her book bag was found buried at a construction site along Highway 18 in Morganton. A billboard now stands at the point where she entered the woods, and her family holds an annual walk from their home to the site to maintain public awareness of the case. Although early circumstances suggested the possibility that Degree had run away, investigators found no clear explanation for such an action and later concluded that she had been abducted after leaving the home. The case has received national media attention. In 2015, the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined state and county authorities in a renewed investigation and offered a reward for information leading to a resolution. In February 2025, the case was reclassified as a homicide investigation, and suspects were publicly identified following a series of searches, the most recent of which occurred in April 2025. Harold and Aquila Degree married on Valentine's Day in 1988. Their son, O'Brien, was born a year later. Asha was born on August 5, 1990. The Degrees raised both children in their house on Oakcrest Drive in a residential subdivision amidst a generally rural area north of Shelby, North Carolina, on the western edge of the Charlotte metropolitan area. Both worked regular jobs nearby. Harold was a dock loader at Pittsburgh Plate Glass, and Aquila worked for Kauai America Manufacturing building pianos. The children let themselves in after school where their parents expected that they would either be doing their homework or finished with it by the time they returned. They made sure their children were insulated from outside influences and had a life centered around their extended family, church, and school. The Degrees did not have a computer in the house. Every time you turned on the TV, there was some pedophile who had lured somebody's child away via the internet. Aquila recalled in a 2013 Jet interview. Aquila said Asha handled this well. She was cautious, shy, and content mostly to stay within the limits her parents set. She was scared to death of dogs, she recalled years later. I never thought she would go out of the house. Asha was in 4th grade at nearby Falston Elementary School, going into a 3-day weekend on the second week of February 2000. The Cleveland County schools were closed on Friday, February 11th, while the Degrees still had to work. The children spent the day at their aunt's house in the same neighborhood, from which they went to their youth basketball practices at their school. The following day, Asha's basketball team, on which she was a star point guard, lost its first game of the season. Asha had fouled out. Her parents recalled that she was somewhat upset about this, crying along with her teammates afterwards, but seemed to have gotten over it and watched her brother's game later that day. On February 13th, a Sunday, the children went to church from a relative's house and then returned home. Around 8 p.m. that night, both children went to bed in the room they shared. Almost an hour later, the power went out in the neighborhood after a nearby car accident. The power came back on at 12:30 a.m., at which time Harold checked on his children and saw both Asha and O'Brien asleep in their beds. He checked again shortly before he went to bed at 2:30 a.m. on February 14th and again saw them both. Shortly afterwards, O'Brien, then age 10, recalls hearing Asha's bed squeak. He did not further rouse himself, as he assumed she was merely changing positions in her sleep. Apparently around this time, Asha got out of bed, taking a book bag she had previously packed with several sets of clothes and personal items, and left the house. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m., a truck driver and a motorist saw her walking south along Highway 18, wearing a long-sleeved white t-shirt and white pants, just north of its junction with Highway 18. They reported this to police after seeing a TV report about her disappearance. The motorist said that he turned his car around because he thought it was strange such a small child would be out by herself at that hour. He circled 3 times and saw Degree run into the woods by the roadside and disappear. It was a rainy night, and the witness said there was a storm raging when he saw her. County Sheriff Dan Crawford said, "We're pretty sure it was her because the descriptions they gave are consistent with what we know she was wearing." He added that they also saw her at the same place, heading the same direction. Aquila awoke at 5:45 a.m. to get the children ready for school that morning. This involved drawing a bath for them because they had not been able to take one the night before due to the power outage. When she opened the children's room to wake them up before their 6:30 alarm and call them to the bath, O'Brien was in his bed. Asha was not, and Aquila was unable to find her in the house or in the family cars. She told Harold she could not find their daughter. He suggested Asha might have gone over to his mother's house across the street. When Aquila called there, her sister-in-law said Asha was not there. "That's when I went into panic mode. I heard a car next door. I put shoes on and ran outside." Aquila called her mother, who told her to call the police. By 6:40 a.m., the first police officers had arrived on the scene. Police dogs called to the scene could not pick up Asha's scent. Aquila went through the neighborhood calling Asha's name, which she said had awakened everyone by 7 a.m. Friends, family, and neighbors canceled their plans for the day to assist police in searching the vicinity, while the pastor of their church, along with other area clergymen, came to the Degrees' home to support them. By day's end, all that had been found was a mitten, which Aquila Degree said did not belong to her daughter, noting that no winter clothing had been taken from the house. Local news coverage prompted the two drivers, who had seen Asha walking along the road early that morning, including the one whose attempt to approach her apparently prompted Asha to flee into the woods, to report the sightings to police. On February 15th, candy wrappers were found in a shed at a nearby business along the highway, near where Asha had been seen running into the woods. 17. Along with them were a pencil, a green marker, and a yellow hair bow that were identified by her parents as belonging to her. Also found was a wallet-sized photograph of a girl the Degrees did not recognize in 2001. The Charlotte Observer reported the photo depicted a friend of Asha's. These materials were the only trace of her found during the initial search. On February 16th, Aquila realized that Asha's bedroom was missing her favorite clothing, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe. A week later, the search was called off, after 9,000 man-hours had been invested in a search of the 2-3-mile radius, 3.2 to 4.8 kilometers, of where she had last been seen. Flyers had been posted all over the area, and 300 leads had been submitted that ranged from possible sightings to tips about abandoned houses and wells where Asha might have ended up. "We have never really had that first good, substantial lead," said County Sheriff Dan Crawford at a news conference. He urged the media to keep the story alive. At the news conference on February 22, 2000, Crawford said he was going long-range with the search for Asha. Both the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, SBI, got involved and put her on their respective databases of missing children. While the agencies were done searching in the area of her home and route, "We're following everything," Crawford insisted. From Aquila's account of what Asha had taken with her, investigators believed she had planned and prepared for this departure over the several days preceding her disappearance. "She's not your typical runaway," observed SBI agent Barbara Poe. Another expert, Ben Ermini of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, noted that most children who run away are at least 12. An FBI agent also pointed to the lack of an issue she might have been running away from, such as a dysfunctional family or poor academic performance. Still, investigators believed that was the most likely explanation for her departure, but that for some reason, she either got off track or was abducted. The media attention went national. A month after Asha's disappearance, the Degree family appeared on the Montel Williams show to call attention to the case, that America's Most Wanted and the Oprah Winfrey Show also devoted segments to it. In March 2000, police erected a full-size color billboard featuring Degree's image and identifying information along Highway 18, near where Degree was last seen. In May 2001, stock car racing driver Travis Kittleson featured an image of Degree on the hood of his car for an event in Concord, North Carolina, which was broadcast live on TNN. Kittleson said, "We've got a perfect opportunity to put Asha's picture on our car and maybe, with any luck, we can help bring her home." In August 2001, Asha's book bag and other items were discovered during a construction project off Highway 18 in Burke County, near Morganton, about 26 miles, 42 kilometers, north of Shelby. It was wrapped in 2 black trash bags. The worker who found it said the book bag contained Asha's name and phone number. The FBI took it to their laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, for further forensic analysis in February 2020. On the 20th anniversary of Asha's disappearance, the FBI confirmed that the book bag contained a copy of Dr. Seuss's McElligot's Pool and a T-shirt depicting the band New Kids on the Block. Neither appeared to have been her property before they were found in her bag. The book was from the library at her elementary school. For many years afterward, leads turned out to be dead ends. In 2004, acting on a tip reportedly received from an inmate at the county jail, the sheriff's office began digging at an intersection in Lawndale. The bones that were found turned out to be from an animal. In 2005, Degree's image was featured on the work vehicles of 2 North Carolina companies, SurfPro, a water cleanup and restoration service, and Republic GDS, a waste pickup service. Republic GDS's area president, Drew Eisenhower, stated, "We are doing this for one reason and one reason only, and that is to find Asha Degree. Then we can move forward and help other missing children as well." An age-progressed photo of Degree, created by the FBI, was featured on 28 vehicles for a period of 30 to 60 days. The degrees took steps to keep Asha's memory and the case alive in the public's mind. In 2008, they established a scholarship in her name for a deserving local student. They host an annual walk to raise awareness and money to fund their search. The walk starts at their home and ends at a missing persons billboard for Asha along Highway 18, near where she was last seen. It was originally held on February 14th, but it was changed to February 7th in 2015 and February 6th in 2016, as Harold and Aquila felt it was not fair to participants to make Valentine's Day a somber occasion. 6.2. Pictures of Asha, both real and those showing her as she might appear in later years, created by investigators to help the search, still decorate the degree house. I fully expect her to walk through the door, Aquila says. Aquila Degree lamented in a 2013 interview with Jet that her daughter's disappearance had not gotten as much media attention over the years as some subsequent cases of missing children because Asha was black. Missing white children get more attention. I don't understand why, she said. I know if you ask them they will say it's not racial. Oh, really? I'm not going to argue because I have common sense. In February 2015, the FBI announced that FBI agents, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, CCSO, investigators, and SBI agents were re-examining the case and re-interviewing witnesses. They also announced a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her disappearance. The community group is offering an additional $20,000 reward. The FBI announced 15 months later, in May 2016, that their reinvestigation of the case had turned up a possible new lead. They disclosed that Asha may have been seen getting into a dark green early 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV, or possibly a Ford Thunderbird from the same era, along Route 18 near where she was last seen later that night. It was described as having rust around its wheel wells. Dark green Lincoln Continental Mark IV, similar to the one Degree was seen entering. In September 2017, the FBI announced that its Child Abduction Rapid Deployment CARD team was in Cleveland County to assist in the investigation and provide on-the-ground investigative, technical, behavioral analysis, and analytical support to find out more about what happened to Asha. The team worked alongside FBI Charlotte employees, CCSO investigators, and North Carolina SBI agents for 10 days. The agencies also meet several times a month to go over the latest on the investigation. Since September 2017, local agents and investigators have conducted approximately 300 interviews. In October 2018, the CCSO detectives appealed for information from the public about 2 items of interest that were found in Degree's book bag: McElligott's Pool, a children's book by Dr. Seuss, which was borrowed from the Falston Elementary School library in early 2000, and a New Kids on the Block concert t-shirt. An investigator said the items are vital clues. In November 2020, an inmate named Marcus Mellon, who had been convicted of sex crimes against children 6 years earlier, wrote a letter to the Shelby Star, claiming that Degree was murdered, and he knew where to find her. 2 months later, Cleveland County Sheriff Alan Norman announced that Mellon's claims had led to another dead end. In September 2024, a search warrant was executed by the CCSO and the FBI in relation to the case. A news release from the sheriff's office said the warrant was issued based on physical evidence. No human remains were recovered, but multiple items of interest, including a green 1964 AMC Rambler, were taken from the site. The search warrant indicates that authorities believe Degree was a homicide victim and that her body has been concealed. On February 13, 2025, the CCSO executed 3 search warrants, seizing cell phones from a local man and 2 of his children. 5 days later, the warrants were made public and included text message exchanges between the suspects that were obtained from a search warrant the previous October. On April 4th, a property, once owned by a prominent figure in the investigation, was searched by investigators. The mystery continues. Thank you for watching and staying till the end. It means so much. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps the channel. Quote of the day: never give up, shine a light.